Can I say, finally, we've gotten this directive that a number of Nigerians have been waiting for, particularly from the CBN. It's interesting that despite the ruling of the Supreme Court on the 3rd of March, 2023, that's about 10 days from today, some people were still reluctant to collect or accept the old notes or trade in the old notes. In fact, there had been talks around even banks rejecting collecting or a deposit of the old notes because they hadn't gotten perhaps that express direction from the CBN. So this is fantastic, excellent that the CBN has come up with this directive. But beyond that is also the impact that it's had on Nigerians in terms of this scarcity of notes. So what we're hoping to see in the next few days following this directive is that we'll have more Naira in circulation, we'll have reduction in the queues, and of course, as the NLC has put it, a total eradication or perhaps reduction of the hardship, untold hardship on Nigerians. However, one of the things I must say, Rufai, is that this directive or the Naira redesign policy actually there was a window, an opportunity there that I hope we will not lose. Now we have access. So as you mentioned, the main story is that until the 31st of December 2023, both old and new notes will work side by side, would be legal tender side by side. But the opportunity this presents is that in the last 3 months, when following the introduction of the new Naira notes and initially before the court had ruled on the 3rd of March, Nigerians had begun to embrace using other payment methods. And it further deepened the CBN cashless policy, whereby we were able to use. I shared the story of how even in traffic you'd be making transfers. I don't know if it's legal to even buy stuff in traffic, but as we see often when you buy plantain or things on the road, people started accepting transfers. We saw food sellers, tomato. You'd go to and more people opened bank accounts. More people embraced using technology, USSD payment, online transfers, e-Naira. So it gave that opportunity. In fact, the banks were so burdened that they were not able to manage it. We had a number of failed transactions. By the way, I hope the banks will begin to reverse those transactions because some of them haven't. Had a transaction from December that has not been reversed until now. Whoa. So yes, and I'm not the only one. A number of people have complained about that because they were burdened. But I want us to see the opportunity here. The CBN has given the directive. We go back to using the old Naira notes and the new Naira notes. But please, let's not wait till December to begin to scramble again and say that we need more time. I believe that this gives us an opportunity we should embrace and not let go of. So the habits we have inculcated, whereby we had less notes on us and we relied more on technology, let us continue. And then the onus is on the banks and mobile companies to build the infrastructure to be able to accommodate the number of people who want to use technology as a means of transaction or transferring money. So again, like I mentioned, I won't touch on the other stories because of time, but I'll just say that I'm glad that this has finally happened. We're looking forward to seeing less reduction in queues. Please, can we make this information, and this is what we're doing today, very loud and so that people can hear it and begin to accept the older notes as legal tender. And very important, please, let's not lose the gains we've gotten from the last 3 months.
Dr. Bati?
What is the context of this conversation? The Supreme Court of Nigeria ruled on March 3rd. State governments having gone to the Supreme Court to say, look, we are aggrieved parties in this matter. We have issues with the Naira redesign policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And we do not think that it is fair for the operations of the states or to the citizens of our states. On March 3, the Supreme Court overruled the Central Bank of Nigeria and said that all the old notes, regardless of what the President of Nigeria said previously about the old 200 Naira notes, should be effective, should remain legal tender till December 31. The Supreme Court also ruled that the Central Bank of Nigeria should make enough notes available by ensuring the printing of new notes so that both the old notes and the new notes can exist side by side. The Supreme Court further said that it was basing its ruling on the fact that the CBN did not give the people of Nigeria enough notice. The Supreme Court is the apex court, is the court of final resort. You can argue back and forth, whichever way you think, as a civil society activist, but the Supreme Court is the apex court. And what it has said, clearly, what it has reestablished, I keep saying it on this program, is that the Central Bank of Nigeria is a federal government agency. And it is bound by the laws of the land. So that's the background. Now the context. The context now is that it has taken the Central Bank of Nigeria a whole week or more to come out publicly to declare that, oh, it abides by the rule of law. Why must it take the Central Bank of Nigeria more than a week? Because the ruling of the Supreme Court is final. Section 287 of the 1999 Constitution says that anything that comes from our courts must be obeyed because we operate a rule of law regime and a democratic dispensation. Nobody is above the laws of the land. However, the Central Bank of Nigeria, in being tardy, hesitant in coming out publicly to address the ruling of the Supreme Court, created a situation whereby the banks were confused. The banks refused to give old notes as directed by the Supreme Court. Most of the banks did not even open their doors. Most of them even said, until they heard from the Central Bank of Nigeria, they will not act. It got to a ridiculous situation whereby state governors were beginning to act as governors of the central bank. They kept saying in many states, in Lagos, in Ogun, and elsewhere, in Kaduna, that people should go ahead and spend the old notes because the Supreme Court has spoken. Some of them even spoke before the Supreme Court. So there's a subtext of politics out there. And then the CBN did not speak until the presidency issued a statement to say that, look, we have not told the AGF or the CBN or anybody ever since we assumed office in 2015 to disrespect court orders, to violate Section 287 of the 1999 Constitution. What President Muhammadu Buhari did in that regard was to throw all the officers who worked with him, who disobeyed the rule of law, who disobeyed court orders. What he did was to disown them. That is the simple, common, intelligent interpretation. Now, that the CBN, on the heels of that, now suddenly came out through Issa Abdulmumin, Director of Corporate Communications, to now issue the statement that we have been waiting for. Yesterday, I was saying that Soludo is not CBN governor. Not many people will rely on the hearsay from Governor Soludo of Anambra State because he said, oh, a bankers committee meeting had been held. He also had a telephone conversation. Nigerians could not have relied on a telephone conversation. That would be hearsay. That would be busybody information. So what the CBN has now done is to offer us clarity. And I hope that the clarity will save the situation. The clarity would be a strong signal to the banks, and that the banks will not come around to say that the CBN, as the regulator, has not communicated to them. But do we need all of this confusion? Clearly, we do not. The average thinking, reasonable man is likely to think, oh, so now that the APC has won the presidency, and Bola Tinubu is the president-elect, now the All Progressives Congress, they are now having their way. What's his name? The governor of Kaduna State, Naira Rufai, can now say, oh, okay, I told them, I showed them, we're in charge. And Tinubu can say, well, didn't I say this was about me? And now I've outsmarted them. Now that kind of perception, that kind of thinking, how does it help Nigeria? Because people will just say, they take us for a ride. They do what they like with us. Nigeria is, as Wole Soyinka pointed out in one of his famous plays, an opera, want your CE. So if it is your time, you want your CE as you like. And the people are served the shortest end of the stick. This is where we are. This is the issue, in my view.
I'm a huge fan of Eric Cantona, Manchester United great. When he had his ordeal in the 90s, the hoo-ha Cantona saga, and he served his suspension, and journalists wanted to hear from him, he said something very profound. He said, when a seagull chases a trawler, it's because it thinks there are sardines in the water. And that's what is happening here. You'll figure out who's the seagull and the trawler and the sardine in this story. We all know how this started. All of this was politics, pure and simple. People had money they wanted to use for elections stuck in their homes, and a policy was made in the best interest of our currency because of mounting inflation, and these people did not like it, the politicians. And when they did not like it, they did everything possible. They accused the CBN governor of terrorism. They said all sorts. We all remember what happened at the airport because it was not rightly reported in the media, how he was tried to be picked up in the airport. All of that ordeal passed. They negotiated with the president. The president said, okay, I'll make concessions, give me some time. They felt, who is the president talking? So they disobeyed the president and they went straight ahead to the courts. Even before the Supreme Court gave ruling, some of these governors were caught on camera saying, don't worry, they will rule in our favor. Was there something they knew that we did not know? And all of a sudden, yes, it came in their favor. We should respect the Supreme Court. And it's so easy for the presidency to come out and write letters that we did not say you should not respect the Supreme Court. Oh yes, just like they respected the Court of Appeal order to release Nnamdi Kanu. Just like they've also respected the courts on El Zakzaki's case. I think with that, it's so easy to cite convenience of insecurity in the country. But you see, we've set a precedent, and I hope we follow it through. Let's challenge the Supreme Court for everything because it favors us. As a bondholder, probably someday soon, when the CBN raises interest rates, I can probably look at some of my friends that are governors and say, please go to the courts on my behalf and arrange boys because my bonds are affected because of the increase in interest rates. I think we'll probably challenge that way. Since we now take everything, monetary policy, to the to the Supreme Court because of our political exigencies. That's the country we've become. Is this going to solve the problem? Time will tell. We have just deepened our confusion because of our political slants and what favors us. But please, politicians should remember that you build a country on the foundation of integrity, truth, and collective fairness. And most of the time about collective fairness, it will not work in your favor. And let's build this country to stand the test of time. You see, anybody that goes ahead to celebrate triumphalism, the question I'll ask you in the long scheme of things, what have you gained?